Good morning and welcome back to Virginia Union University's Faculty Spotlight. You are in for a treat this morning. We get an opportunity to talk to another one of our faculty members who has a very special assignment here on our campus. Today we are here with Dr. Ingrid Bircann-Barkey. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and there's a lot to unpack. So put your seatbelts on because we're going to be moving really fast. This is the fastest 30 minutes you'll have today. But we are excited and we're just happy to be here. And I thank faculty and all those who are able to join us this morning. So get your good cup of coffee or tea, your favorite snacky breakfast food, and join us for a great conversation with Dr. Ingrid Bircann-Barkey. As some of you may know, but let me share this with you. You've had a chance to read her bio, but there's some interesting things here that we just didn't know. And right before we started, I had an opportunity, as I call it, in the green room, to just talk a little bit about her and what she's doing and how she's thinking and how she got to where she is today. Great information. And some of that will get a chance to slip you in on the conversation. But what we do know is that she is the founding dean of the School of Latin American and Caribbean Studies, Universidad Virginia Union. We are Virginia Union, we're the first HBCU to implement a school dedicated solely to the study of and research of the cultures and societies of Latin America. How interesting is that? And the Caribbean and US Latino communities. We have now taken on a really great challenge that we are looking so forward to under the leadership of Dr. Bircann-Barkey. Universidad Virginia is a campus space that will support Hispanic, Latino students in achieving their higher education goals and provide educational and cultural resources to a larger Hispanic and Latino community. What I did learn was Dr. Barkey has over 25 years of experience in higher education in the fields of Spanish, Latin American and Caribbean studies. She's done a number of researches that focus more on quantitative research and curriculum development. She is the United States and Dominican represented there in her understanding of these two areas. She also is interested in women's work in Caribbean and the intersectionality of gender, race, culture, and labor processes. She has a lot of education, but let me focus on this. She has her PhD in Spanish, Latin American, Caribbean, and US Latino Culture Studies from the University of Albany State, University of New York. That's a lot. We got a lot to unpack. So let's get started. Welcome, Dr. Bircann-Barkey. Welcome to Faculty Spotlight. What it is an honor to just have a conversation with you this morning. Invite all our listeners to be a part of that. Anyone who has any questions or anything you'd like to ask, feel free to put it in the chat or any comments you want to put in the chat, or feel free to put it in the question and answers. So let's get started. So Dr. Barkey, buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Buenos dias, Doctora Jackson.
I am excited just to ask this question because we all want to know. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your academic training, your field of expertise, and what you teach at Virginia Union University.
Oh, thank you for asking. It's a very complex question to ask somebody to tell you something about themselves, especially in my case, being a first-generation immigrant to the United States, which means that my parents didn't immigrate to the U.S. Some of my siblings did. Others stayed in the Dominican Republic. But more than that, more than being a first-generation immigrant to the U.S., I am, first of all, a Santiaguera. Santiaguera means I'm from the town of Santiago in the Dominican Republic. On top of that, I'm Cibaeña. I'm from the northern, from the Cibao region where the city of Santiago is located. I am Dominican, Dominicana in that case, woman from the Dominican Republic. And on top of that, I'm from the Caribbean. I'm Caribeña. So, and if we want to go in more detail into my, Caribbean roots, I'm from the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, because one of the signatures of Latin America is the diversity in culture, societies, and languages. So I'm much more than a first generation immigrant to the U.S. Like many of Dominicans, I grew up in an intergenerational family that could be considered today progressive, but back then was more of people ahead of their times. My parents belonged to a generation that grew up under a terrible dictatorship, and for many years, for 31 years, and yet there remained decent people, full of love for family and country, and instill in us this idea of the values of being decent and incorruptible, and just people interested in life, and in a good life for everybody. I grew up in a house that was filled with books, with arts, with artifacts, with people all the time, extended family. I mentioned before, it was extended and intergenerational. My grandmother lived with us, my mother's side, cousins, nephews, nieces, all, when I think about my upbringing, I cannot just see one or two people. I see lots of people in many, a very diverse group of people in my family. I'm from a generation of Dominicans who came of age at the end of a very difficult political situation and social unrest. I was lucky, this was at the end in the late 70s. I was lucky to have mentors in high school that introduced me to ideas of social justice, liberation theology, critical thinking, and that's when those elements of my education in the Dominican Republic shaped the person that I am today. In terms of my academic training, I had to learn English. I learned English in my early 20s to specifically come to the US because my parents decided that I needed to learn English, first of all, and study in the US. So I always tell my students that in my case, I spent my whole elementary and high school experience in the Dominican Republic, but all of my higher education was in the US. And I came here with very little English. So I completed the ESL program. And when I say completed, I started the English as a second language program at NYU, New York University. And then 5 years later, I graduated with a degree in anthropology from Columbia University in the US, in New York, in anthropology. I don't know if I mentioned that my BA was in anthropology. Fast forward 15 years from when I graduated from college in '86. That's how long it took me to go back to go to graduate school. And I tell the story, and I'm proud of my story because I want my students to see what happens to when life, when we will pursue education as one of the things that are going to bring us to a full life, right? So it took me 15 years to go back to school, and at that time I was 40 years old. I had a toddler and a kindergartner, and a husband who had to commute 13 hours on the weekends to see us. It was crazy. It was not impossible, but it was crazy, and it was very difficult. But we did it as a family. At that time, once I finished my master's, we moved to Richmond, and actually my second job here in Richmond was at Virginia Union in '06. So I'm very familiar with Virginia Union. I worked here from '06 to '09 as a Spanish associate professor of Spanish. That's when I fell in love with our beloved HBCU. My colleagues, my students, our students, what has been, what Dr. Lucas talks about and other people talks about, Dr. Strayhorn, the HBCU experience. And one of the reasons I left in '09 is because I needed to finish my PhD, and I needed to do field work in the Dominican Republic because that was the topic that I chose. So it was impossible as a mother, as a wife, as a full-time employee to pursue field work in the field of anthropology and social sciences, and get my PhD so that I can go back into the workforce with a higher educational level. So it took me another 8 years to finish, because my children were little, all these things. So that's I always wanted to put that in there, because we all have different paths to higher education, and at times it seems really difficult and impossible, and we want to give up. But then there's always this goal that we have. It's like, well, what I want to do? I want to be a professor. I want to make an impact in higher education. I have to get a PhD, regardless of having babies or or toddlers or kindergartners, all that. And I have the support of my family and all that. My dissertation topic was on the examining the gender labor process and production transformation in the hand-rolled cigars in the Dominican Republic, factories in the Dominican Republic. It was a historical, qualitative research on how the gender processes on the production of hand-rolled cigars that have two components, of the agricultural production of the tobacco leaf and the urban the urban making of the cigar, right? The hand-rolled cigar. So, and I had a personal connection to this topic because my mother, in my mother's side, my maternal grandmother, the one who lived with us in our house when I was growing up, was a cigar worker for 26 years, Dr. Jackson, and she worked at the lowest echelons of the industry, of the labor process. And to me, when I came of age, thinking about issues of social justice, gender processes, and social change, I'm like, how did she do it? So my dissertation was not about her, but it was about understanding the processes in the labor process that based in gender, race, culture, put women in certain positions, in disadvantaged positions at work. That's why I put in my bio that I'm interested in women's work in the Caribbean. I want to say something quickly. In graduate school, I was also introduced to educational theory and practice. I didn't finish a program in graduate school in educational theory and practice. That's when I learned, I trained and learned on theoretical aspects of education. Was introduced to the works of Patricia Hill Collins, Lisa Delpitz, Jane Baker Miller, women who were working on explaining intersectionality, explaining how education policies have components that we need to dismantle, so to make education more democratic for all populations, not only here in the US, but in the world. So that's, I had that also, that interest in educational theory. I also important critical learning in my training, my academic training, was to understand the relational culture theory, okay, which is a theory rooted in psychology that is applicable to education, meaning very simple, is this idea that people learn, people grow, that relationships are central to human growth. And the teaching and learning relationship is a growing, it's a relation, people grow in relationship, right? So to me, it was a key moment in understanding how I wanted to understand, explain and contribute to higher education, change and understand how important it is to understand that the teaching and learning it's a back and forth relationship, and that's how we grow. We don't grow in separation, we grow in relationships.
And it seems yes. that you all of what you shared with us, and thank you for allowing us to probe into your background. Just I know we can spend another hour right there and learn more, which many don't know. I met you back in 2006.
Yes.
That's when you came to teach, and we both needed to work on our doctorates at that time.
So you know exactly what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. So what I wanted to make sure we get in is because of all that, because of all your background and your training and just your plethora of things that you have done in this industry, in this genre, you are now the founding dean of Latin American and Caribbean Studies. Can you tell us about how and why that program formed here at Virginia Union?
Yes, I am happy to explain it quickly. We have to think of the creation of the School of Latin American and Caribbean Studies in the context of the university's strategic plan to be best in class by 2025, and also becoming a Hispanic serving institution. That's one of the goals that we have. And Hispanic serving institution is a federal designation for universities or colleges that reach 25% of the enrollment of self-identified Hispanic Latino students. So that is there's a numbers of, it's a measurable guidelines to become federally designated as a Hispanic serving institution. Technically, when we get to 14% of our total full-time enrollment to be self-declared Hispanics and Latinos, we can start. We will call emerging Hispanic serving institution. Now that is the measure, the federal denomination that we want to reach, but there is a lot more to it. So in the path to becoming an HSI, we have several things, and we have what Dr. Lucas has envisioned as Universidad, right? In the Universidad Virginia Union, it comes out of his interest or his vision, together with the Virginia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce president. They met several years ago to try to figure out how to attract, how to impact the Hispanic student population in Richmond and surrounding areas and bring them to VU. That's how this idea of becoming an HSI comes about. So in thinking of creating this Universidad, this concept, we are looking at three components: the academic components, the research component, and the community components of Universidad. So the first step is the academic one, and that's how the School of Latin American and Caribbean Studies have come to be. And within the School of Latin American and Caribbean Studies, we have three departments. We have Spanish departments that will be offer Spanish BA and minors in Spanish education degrees for people who want to become Spanish teachers. And also we have a Spanish for the profession certification where students who are, let's say, studying criminal justice and want to become a policeman or a judge or something, or go to law school, they can take the Spanish certification, which is 24 credits, and graduate with a degree in criminal justice and a certification in Spanish, that when they go and apply for a job, they can say, listen, I passed my advanced low proficiency test from ACTFL, which is the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Languages, and you can hire me because I know I'm proficient to be able to deal with the public in Spanish. That's part of the certification. Then the second component is the research part. And Dr. Jackson, you've been in the project of the National Research Institute's component of the best in class.
The Virginia Union National Research Institute.
So the Institute for Latin American and Caribbean Studies Research will be immersed in that concept, right?
That's
but
correct.
Yes.
That's correct. Yes.
And that means that our students and our faculty will have active research agendas.
Yes.
Now the third component will be part that I still have trouble putting a name to it, but it has to do with the community. It's the space where it will be the point of connection with the larger community. And you remember that Dr. Lucas had a front page interview with the Richmond Free Press a couple of weeks ago. So he outlined a couple of the things that are going to be part of that community aspect of Universidad, community resource service. We will offer, we'll do research on what are the needs of the Latino, the Spanish-speaking community, and offer courses in Spanish and English, for example, for them. Training, whatever is needed. And one thing that he said, we're trying to really create the space where professionals who, immigrants, recent immigrants who in Latin America were, had a degree, they've come to the States and they don't really have to take menial jobs when they can come to us and we can help them get their accreditations in order. And with that will come ESL, right? It's not only introduce them to the levels of accreditations needed to work in their professions back home, that they acquire back home, but also ESL, which we're going to also implement with the School of Continuing Education and the English department. So as you can see, Universidad exists as this space that is collaborative. Like we have, it exists because we're going to work with other units on campus. And the vision of all this is that by 2025, we'll be an HSI. And as I said, not only numbers, but we'll have soccer teams. And you know what that means?
Yes.
always that means that students will bring their families, their abuelos, their grandparents, their neighbors. They will come and they will understand that VU is for them also.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's the idea of the Universidad. This and I can go on and on explaining that. I hope I answer your question.
Well, that was the second part to the question was about the Universidad and its mission, purpose, and function. But I think you shared a lot of what you explained for being the founding dean of the Latin American and Caribbean Studies, and you kind of wove that right in for us. We're nearing the finish line.
Oh my goodness.
And so I do have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to see what our audience, if they have, I would like to share some things that's been in our chat and in the Q&A. So I have two more really important questions that we want to know. What attracted you to be a part of the VU family?
I think when I said at the beginning, when I got here in 2006, I fell in love with the HBCU, with VU. is because regardless of country, of opinions like people may have, there's a lot of similarities between the Hispanic Latino experience and the African American experience. There is issues of history that gives us shared identity, shared history, insertion in society. We have similar ways of being incorporated in US society. So being here, let me tell you, when I was told about this project, you know, Dr. Lucas and Dr. Goodrich, who was our provost back then, didn't have to twist my arm really hard. And now, you know, working with the new leadership with Dr. Strayhorn and you and everybody else, and all my colleagues or comrades, as I call them, in the Dean's Council, it's a joy being here in a you know, in a place where family matters, in terms of relationship with students matter, with their learning, the place that we have in their lives. Like we, you know, I don't want to do stuff that people say, you know, it's just that you really see, and the African American student in my mind is an active thinker, is it can articulate their lives. So that's something that I appreciate and I love immensely.
So I have one more pressing question, and then I'm going to go to our audience to see how they have some questions or some comments for you as we wrap up today's faculty spotlight. What advice do you have for those considering a major or minor or degree in Latin American and Caribbean studies? What advice do you have for them?
Do it. Do it. You know why? Because it will change your life. It will change your perspective about the world and your perspective about yourself. When you learn about other people's cultures and languages, you become part of it and you expand your worldview. You learn things that you never thought that were, you know, that were there. In that, you know, and there are other things about learning languages and learning about other cultures that is in your brain. It is actually proven, and all my, you know, science colleagues can back me up on this. You know, when you learn a different language, a second language, third, you use part of the brain that you don't otherwise use, right?
That's right.
And so by you know, adding a minor, double majoring, and we're going to have associate degrees also. By doing that, you will not only gain that personal insight in yourself and the world, but it will help you in the workplace, because, you know, we live in a very diverse society in the US. So just by being exposed to other cultures in college and learning and studying abroad and spending time in other countries, you gain that experience that is going to serve you in the job market. Do it. That's my. Just do it. Just do it.
And I know we talked about just part of the US culture is to have a foreign language offered to starting in 6th grade, I believe. I took it Spanish. You can pick a language, but many have picked Spanish. I did learn Spanish from 6th grade through high school. And as I told you, my challenge was I didn't have anyone to really exchange it with. And then we talked about now, fast forward, how best to get ingrained back into that. So I appreciate that. We got a couple of questions for you.
Good.
Let's start with the first one. Dr. Barkey, your favorite person asked this. What's your favorite language to read in and why?
Spanish, Español.
Your favorite person wrote this. One of your favorite persons.
One of my favorites. I have so many favorite people. Oh my God. It's
this is Peter.
My son, Peter.
So Peter. What's your favorite language to read in and why?
Español, definitely. But it ties into what I just said, right? Language, it's culture, is images, is experiences that you have as a kid growing up. So, you know, when I think in Spanish and when I read in Spanish, it transports me to my life prior to being an immigrant in the US. And And it just makes me very happy and reminds me of my parents, my friends. You know, I have friends from kindergarten who are probably watching this interview. So it brings me back to my core.
So this is an interesting question, and let me share it. Don't you think your experience in leadership will be much needed in the Latin American and Caribbean countries than in the US?
Well,
No, we need her here. No.
well, no, I think that my place is here in the US. Being here for so long has done something to like I can't keep up with what's happening in the Dominican Republic because I don't live there anymore full time. So I'm more effective here, right? And I've made my life here with my favorite people here. See, that's I think I'm more needed here in the U.S. because I bring knowledge in news about Latin America that people already know about down there. If you know what I mean.
So here's another question, and then I'm gonna shift for a second beat, and then we'll wrap up.
All right.
Okay, so what connections do you see between Latino culture and African American culture, traditions, and history?
Well, connections are rooted in family values. We have shared family values. We understand the importance of intergenerational presence in the family. You know, the African American family and the Latino family embrace the elders, embrace their grandparents, the extended family. That's an important one. Another one is religion, you know, faith. The community is deeply rooted in faith. Something simple like this, food. Let me tell you, when I came to Richmond in '06, I couldn't believe that I could eat soul food because that's what we eat in the Caribbean with a little, you know, different ingredients or tweaking or things. But something as mundane as the food links us together.
Yeah.
See, and there is so much more. And one thing that I want to mention quickly that I completely forgot. In the School of Latin American Caribbean Studies, we are going to offer degrees in Latin American Caribbean Studies, Afro-Latino Cultural Studies, U.S. Cultural Latinx Studies, and Caribbean Studies. So it's not only Spanish. I forgot to mention it because we were talking about that. I just wanted to plug that in, that we're going to have, we're designing the curriculum for that to offer, to attract Afro-Latinos and in, you know, Caribbean studies and all that.
Well, okay, I had one more question. It just came up, and lots going on in the chat. So we may want to hang around for that because some of it I can't interpret. It's in Spanish beyond my academic training.
I know, I can see. I know who. I mean, I want to know if I broke the internet.
Yeah, I think you did. I mean, we have folks from the Bahamas and other places other than the U.S. who are tuning in right now. How wonderful. So let me share this fourth question with you, and then we will have to wrap up. As promised, we stick with I try to do that. It's Express, it's Faculty Spotlight Express. So the question is this the state of college? How to improve the relationship with Haiti and the Dominican Republic?
Haiti. It's the question was
how to improve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The person who wrote that question should email me to imbircann@vu.edu because it's a very complex answer that needs to be done here. But it's a historical issue. It has to do with colonial projects in the Caribbean by the French and the Spanish, and how both societies emerged in different directions. please, whoever wrote this question, email me. I'll be looking forward to discussing this in more detail, because I will hate to give you a simple answer, because this is a very complex question.
So Jose Antonio Vanderhorst Celeredo, make sure you email him.
I know him.
Question. Yes.
I know him. He's my brother-in-law's committee of old, his generation, that they just do this thing. They look for conversations like this. Beautiful. Just escríbeme.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Bircann-Barkey, for allowing us to take a sneak peek into your life and your work, and just wonderful news that you shared with us today. We appreciate you, and you and I will be talking in the near future again, because you hit my magic word, and that's research. And so I look forward to it. I thank all of you who joined us today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, the Faculty Spotlight. So up next Friday, we will have Dr. Reverend Faith Harris with us. So stay tuned. Have an enjoyable day and a safe weekend. Thank you.
Gracias. Buenos días.
Gracias. Buenos días. Take a look at the chat. I think you'll be pleased. Question surface. Oh, we can't have that. Oh, I like to get all. Oh, well, it's in Spanish, so. I think they were saying something like.
Are we still live? I think we're still live.
Projecto. I'm not a good interpreter of it, but I think they were saying something project, because like you said,